Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our annual Cedar Valley Anti-Racism Coalition book read. This year's book is Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and writer, author Isabel Wilkerson. Wilkerson is no stranger to the Cedar Valley, as some of you may know, because you and I brought Professor Wilkerson to campus a few years ago, and we explored together her award-winning book and national bestseller, The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration. Now, this is the last panel discussion of this particular series this year. And, we just want to, first of all, thank the Cedar Valley Anti-Racism Coalition, which is a conscientious group of members, by the way, representing the Metroplex here in the Cedar Valley, and who have a heart for transforming community for the better. And we would especially like to thank Gwen Berry, the Chief Diversity Officer at UNI, as well as Rick Seeley, and as well as Anton, who were part of that learning technologies at UNI. And of course, Rick is the manager. All of their other special teams members, we want to thank them for helping make such discussions like this one even possible. And this year we decided to start using co-moderators. And tonight I want to introduce to you, present to others, Ms. Joy Briscoe. Joy is currently the Talent Acquisition and Outreach Specialist for Waterloo Schools and the Executive Director for 24/7 Black Leadership Advancement Consortium. There she leads the organization in community strategy to promote economic vitality for Black families here in the Cedar Valley. And so Joy, please take it away.
Thank you, Abraham. I am truly honored to be here and speak. Oh, Abraham is one of my favorite speakers. He always just sets a fantastic tone. And I think it's so relevant that we are closing out a dynamic group, a series of conversations, because this is where we have the conversations about how we can truly move the needle. And I think so often we get stuck on looking at the data and the research. And so we don't necessarily spend the time we need to on action plans. And so I'm excited to talk to all of you today, because I feel like each and every one of you play a role in what we can do to move action forward. I don't know about you, but I thought this book was absolutely excellent. And some of the previous panels spoke to the way that she lays out how a caste, and not necessarily racism, but it makes it more systemic. And so I think this evening, we're going to be able to look at some systemic approaches for how we can see change in our community. So I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm super excited to talk to each and every one of you. But before we get started, I think it's only perfect that you also talk about like who you are and talk a little bit about why this conversation pertains to the role you have in our community. So I'll start with Rudy Jones first. Mr. Dr. Rudy Jones, if you can go ahead and introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Joy. First of all, explanation of my brother, not I, but I appreciate it anyway. Graduating from North Carolina State University, visit my sister.
We have a bad connection. Dr. Jones, can you do anything with your sound? You come across muted.
Let me make
muffled.
sure I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but you're just breaking up a lot.
Is this better? Is this better?
That's
Yes.
better. That's better.
Thank you. Okay. So after graduating from North Carolina A&T State University in 1983, came to visit my sister, got snowed in, been here ever since. I've had the great fortune of working with the city of Waterloo in the community development office over the last 34 years. Spent my first 12, 13 years as the contract compliance officer, which was responsible for overseeing the Minority Business Enterprise, Women Business Enterprise program, which gives those individuals greater access to city, state, and federal funded projects. From there, I did a couple, 2 or 3 years in the neighborhood services office. In my last 15 or so years, I've been with the community development office as the director. So I've been in the trenches and observing firsthand how these caste systems work, how racism and discrimination and just a lot of bad human experiences affect all of us. So hopefully I can add to the conversation today based on my brief experiences.
All right, thank you, Rudy. We know you will. We know you will. You've been on the front lines pushing for equity and financing and development for our city for many years. You know, we're looking forward to having you in the conversation. And Jason, if you could share a little bit about yourself and how this conversation in this book read has brought you in this evening.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for having me. Happy and excited to be here. Yeah, this was an unbelievable book. First, been in the Northeast Iowa here since, well, my whole life, but been in the financial services industry, whether it was at a bank, other financial services for the last 14 years. Been working in the Cedar Valley for a little over 3 years now. Previously was Cedar Rapids area. I am the commercial banking officer at Community Bank and Trust. You know, I think this book spoke volumes, especially for our community, and how it's important for all of us to help better our community. And there was a lot going on in this book that, you know, I didn't initially realize. A lot of the nuances, a lot of the subtleties that, you know, I was blind to, and it's really eye-opening. Extremely great read, and I dug in a little bit deeper on some of the interviews as well. Happy to be here. I think, you know, we are needing to move the needle forward. We're trying to take those steps and realize where we are currently so that we know where we need to get to. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. We are happy to have you here. And again, having lenders and people that have the ability to influence as a part of this conversation and taking those steps to get educated on some of the historical traumas in our community. I mean, that's a great step. And so, and even along that line, Travis Ferguson, who is one of few Black realtors in our community. Can you talk a little bit about how this book spoke to you and why you decided to join us on this panel this evening?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys. Reverend Funches and myself had a pretty brief conversation when he introduced this topic and this idea to me, and I immediately got excited just because in our line of work in real estate, you know, you kind of get to see firsthand and up close some of the trickle down effects from redlining and from the original foundation of, you know, the caste systems that we see every day. And in real estate, with it being kind of a foreign subject to a lot of people at a young age, and seeing how that can happen when the knowledge and the information is out there readily available, was something that really kind of drew my attention, and then kind of expanded to my real estate team. So we've been really excited to have this conversation. It's been a huge priority of ours to do everything possible to continue to have these open conversations and do it is necessary to get more representation in real estate, get more equality in lending, and understanding some of the effects that might not be openly practiced right now, but we're still seeing the aftermath of it every day, especially in real estate.
All right, Travis, and you gave a perfect segue into where I think we're going to spend a good portion of our time this evening talking about redlining, and that oftentimes people feel like, well, that's over. You know, we don't have to deal with that anymore. Yet in the book, she laid out perfectly how the effects of the caste systems that even when we don't see them and they're not as prevalent outwardly, they still exist today. And so let's start with that as a question. Like, what is the role that the caste system plays in upholding some of the barriers when we talk about home ownership and when we talk about housing? And I'll start with you, Travis, because you kind of segue into that. So we'll go ahead and start with you as well.
Yeah, well, I'll just kind of open it up by seeing, just kind of hitting on some of the things that we see firsthand on a regular basis, and it starts with personal experience. For example, when I was introduced to real estate as a real possibility for a career, I was almost 30 years old, and one of the things that we realized is the concept of real estate and home ownership in particular, with it being one of the most valuable assets, from appreciation, to being able to will it, to your family, and how the information on how to obtain it and how to use it, whether it be an investment portfolio or a career in real estate, those concepts are foreign to a lot of kids. And we realize, when we look at the industry, the real estate industry from an agent perspective, knowing that you can get your real estate license with pretty much a GED, and then looking at the lack of diversity in the business, you have to at some point ask why. And the biggest thing that's blinding to me now, but it was, something that I never noticed from the beginning, was, just how certain people, unless they see representation in any field, it's hard to imagine that being a possibility for them. Regardless of how many books are on the shelves, if they don't see people that they can relate to in those roles, it's really, really hard for a young person to envision that, whether it be owning a home, being in the business itself. And so to answer your question, those are some of the more direct parallels that we see from redlining. When people get forced into one particular area, then of course that's all they see. And if they don't see home ownership around them, if they don't see active, thriving real estate investment portfolios around them, then it's going to be more of a foreign subject compared to somebody that has that readily available everywhere they look around them.
I so agree. And Jason, from your perspective, because I know when you said you were reading, how much that was opening things up for you. Did you see some aha moments as to, like, I never thought about it that way, or where the caste system could potentially into redlining, and why certain individuals live in certain areas, and why we see lower amounts of home ownership for people of color?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as redlining goes, a lot of different financial institutions, a lot of banks feel like they're not redlining, but they may not directly feel like they are, but they're not providing the resources, not providing the information, the accessibility, getting those tools to the entire community that they serve. And that's more eye-opening for me, because, we feel like we're trying to serve the community that we represent. We're trying to get the information out, but are we being as accessible as we can be? And we're taking a lot of steps now to improve. I wish we could say that we were perfect from the beginning, and we're identifying those areas that we need to improve on. And part of that is going to be here at the end of 2021 through 2023, but providing those resources, showing the community what we can provide. And as far as redlining goes, we need to do a better job of tracking that, making sure that we are providing loans, providing accounts, and services to those that have been underserved and underbanked.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if I might interject here, Joy. Thank you. What I was impressed with, what Jason just talked about, was how he uses data to inform the action plan. I mean, obviously we all want to see action, but we need the data to actually help paint the picture as to what is wrong. How can we even begin to go about fixing it? And one of the things that came to mind is that Wilkerson in the book, of course, right? And for everybody who is paying attention here tonight, we just want to make sure that you understood that you did not have to have read the book prior to being a part of the panel discussion. So, every particular panelist may not necessarily reference the book per se, but generally speaking, she did say before the United States became the United States, there was a caste system in place. That's what Wilkerson writes about. And I guess I was just curious to know, to try to follow up with what Joy has already began asking, to what degree do you see the vestiges of caste? Do you see the presence of caste in today's political economy, operating in the spheres of influence that you operate in? Do you see vestiges of caste that Wilkerson was talking about that generally we have come to accept? And maybe I'll follow up with Jason. I don't know how you want to go with this, Joy, but.
If I could chime in before we move a little further, working with the city has been an eye-opening experience for me in the sense that we oftentimes speak in code. We've heard the conversations about the NIMBY, not in my backyard. And when government brings resources to the table to address matters of housing, employment, et cetera, we need to be careful how these conversations are crafted. So the not in my backyard conversation basically is suggesting that we don't want anybody in our neighborhood that's not like us, that might not have the same income area as us, might not have the same academic background, when in reality, most of our services are in those neighborhoods because the clientele we serve are exactly like you, the folks we're seeking to serve. We're called to serve low and moderate income folks. And even though we sometimes have the opportunity to direct those programs and services and resources to minorities and African Americans and people of color, it definitely fits into that caste ideology where folks think that we don't want anybody in the neighborhood that doesn't look like us, sound like us, so on and so forth. When in fact, these are the very, it amazes me how that conversation, sometimes I'm like, these aren't rich folk that's moving into your neighborhood. These folks are some of the same folks you say you don't want in the neighborhood. And it happens still today. This year, the city had an opportunity to have a significant housing plan move forward. And the conversation kind of started about not just we didn't want those type of houses, but when you understand the code, it suggests we don't want those folks living in those kind of houses because they think it devalues the neighborhood, it devalues their property value, when in fact, any new development, if nothing else, it sustains it and probably will improve and increase the property value of the neighborhood. And everybody wants better property values and equity. The only way you get that is added to your own property, or it has to come through development of the overall neighborhood.
Yeah, and just very briefly, I just wanted to highlight the fact that in our work, human rights, community development, there is a component known as affirmatively furthering fair housing to help break up what we are defining today as racism and caste. But we oftentimes run into opposition because of these embedded biases, because of these embedded thoughts about certain people in community. And we would dare say, as we use the lens and language of the book Caste, that a lot of this has to deal with deeply embedded, deeply entrenched ideology associated with this caste system that Wilkerson said was in place before the United States became the United States. It goes all the way back to colonial Virginia. And what's staggering is that something that began that far back still has the power to control the way we operate even today. Thank you, Joy. I'm
No, Abraham, that's what we're here for, right? Like these conversations that ignite passion in us for about this work, because I know that we all do this work. And even building off of that, like she talked about like the New Deal, when there was Social Security and home ownership programs that originally were rolled out and they did not reach Black and Brown audiences. And then when they were amended so that they could reach Black and Brown audiences, then people felt like they were being excluded from something, right? And so maybe we'll lead that even into our next question, because we know that right now we're in such a polarized time that people are stoking those fears, and even in our own community, right? There are people stoking those fears, stoking that separate, and you know, if we provide equity, I know Abraham one night Rhonda gave, and you had a great conversation about equity and what that meant and what that looked like. So equity is giving people absolutely what they need. And somehow there are times where people feel like equity is taking something away from them when essentially it isn't. So I'll start with you this time, Rudy. Even from your lens, like I love we have somebody here representing government. We have somebody here representing banking institutions. We have somebody here in real estate and entrepreneurship. So you each have a different perspective on this, but starting even from your lens, Rudy, can we talk a little bit about when we know there's that if you focus attention in one area, that somehow is taking away from me. How do we counter that, especially in these times? How do we address dismantling caste systems in these times when there are people that are actually stoking that and really wanting to implement that? What are some things that we can do, especially from your role in government?
Well, I guess I'm very fortunate to be in the trenches and be in position to have a major say on what our system looks like, our programs look like. Just this, in the creation of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the first cabinet director, Robert Weaver, he was not only interested in the housing component, but he brought an economic background to the table because it actually has the combined thought of how do we supply our communities with viable employment that they can even begin to afford a house. So we oftentimes get stuck on just the housing component and we neglect the employment component, which is the basis of anybody affording anything. So what we try to do is have, and thus the need for a contract compliance program, which gives minority women at that point in time access to processes that they can be a part of construction projects. Just this summer, I had a very unique situation with our rehabilitation program. We have a handful of rehabilitation contractors, and as is most communities nationwide, we've been faced with a shortage of skilled labor. So when we competitively bid our projects, because of the COVID, we left $1 million on the table because we shut our office down to maintain the safety of staff, homeowners, and contractors. But we knew that once we got geared back up, we were going to have a ton of work to do. So I had about 6 general rehab contractors, and I had 2 additional Black contractors that we brought to the program because we just did not have capacity to perform work and meet our benchmarks. That's how we were able to draw those funds down. So my Black contractors began to be awarded some work. And then they started showing up, the white contractors started showing up on my Black contractors' projects, you know, checking it out. But then they started complaining to my staff because they were starting to get work that they were accustomed to having most of. So I called those guys in and asked them, you know, okay, what's going on? And they just telling me that they're just checking the projects out to see what's going on. And as we continued to talk, the first contractor was one of my 3 Black contractors. I'm like, okay, all right. What other projects have you visited? The second project was my other Black contractor. I'm like, okay, I figure we got a little pattern going here, but I'm like, I'm trying to be genuine about it. And so the third project, I'm like, so what was this third project looking like? The only projects that my white contractor had visited was my Black contractors. And after he saw my notes, he blew up and he accused me of playing the race card. But watch this. HUD put the race card in the deck where we're supposed to make sure that minority women have access. It's not a giveaway program, but supposed to have access to work like everybody else. We don't have a Black HQS guidelines or white HQS guidelines, housing quality standards. These are just housing quality standards that keep everybody safe. So
Rudy,
after he
that-
blew up.
That's a great point. I absolutely, I mean, because we know that happens, right? Like when other people are sometimes given access to the game, then the people that have been the main players on the game feel like there's a cheat code, when essentially there's not a cheat code. The game, it needed to be more inclusive anyway, and that's the way it's meant to be. And if we go back to our reading, we can remember that she even talks about that it's better for everyone when there's inclusion, right? It's definitely better for everyone. But in that process, you know, we run into people that are very unhappy with other people being included. And so, like Jason, even in your line, like, have you run into that now? Because I know, Stacy, I know you're here for the book read, but I also know that banking historically hasn't been a very diverse career field. And so have you run into pushback, or how do you even deal with when individuals are saying, hey, you know, why do we have to be concerned with diversity and equity now when we haven't had to? And if they don't qualify for the loan, they just don't qualify. Like, what are some narratives or ways that you can counter that?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with kind of the loan side of things. You know, what we need to do, and kind of how Rudy had alluded to, is the way it's set up, there are barriers to entry. We need to identify what those are and how can we remove those barriers. You know, just through a standard lending process, you know, certain things may come up that may exclude, you know, different demographics of the population that, okay, how can we help? Whether that's partnering with other programs within the community, other partners. You know, we do a lot with SBA, USDA, Blackhawk County microloan, Intercog, Blackhawk County Economic Development. If we are identifying a barrier, we're wanting to find a solution. And I think everyone needs to do that. It's not, you know, community bank and trust can't solve the issue as a whole. We need to partner with everyone else. We need to get those resources, get those contacts. And, you know, that's what we're really pushing for now is, and it goes to the tracking. When we're tracking, are we serving the community that we're located in, and are we serving it equally? And if we're not, by tracking what loans we're doing, well, we need to find ways to eliminate those barriers, you know, to make it more accessible. And it goes with partnership. On the employment side, you know, we had hired a DEI officer who's doing a great job, and they've developed a plan so far that I'd like to go through a few of those steps. You know, recently we've hired that through our corporate level. So we're focusing on those barriers of inclusion and how to remove those, but that's the same for the employment side. You know, we're refining our talent, recruitment, hiring processes to better understand, you know, what those employment opportunities are for all people. And then finding ways to promote within. We want to create these career paths for everybody, so that everyone's on an equal playing field and has the equal resources to get, you know, their career path and accomplish what they want to accomplish. And, you know, right now, I think you're right, Joy, that banking has historically not shown that. So we're making a big push, and part of that is providing the opportunities providing the resources, getting that information out there, but then creating an environment and an atmosphere where it is welcoming. We don't want to discourage people from not applying. So we're doing a big push for that this year, next year. We're kind of outlining that plan, but I think those are the first steps that really are going to get to the core of, that diversity.
I was just thinking, I was reflecting upon what Jason was saying, and boy, I really do appreciate what he shares with us. I was just thinking that there's another financial institution here in the state of Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, that came up with $500 million to help with housing acquisitions. And I was thinking to myself, my goodness, $500 million. But I'm wondering how much of that goes past those who are most impacted by caste, in order to use Wilkinson's terminology, and how much of that is really reserved for the immigrant, whomever he or she might be. And I'm wondering, Brother Ferguson, are you able to tap into these vast reservoirs of finance capabilities that are designed to help people get the homes, but are you somehow shut out of that process, or can you take advantage of that? Are you in the loop?
Yeah, so well, a big part of what we do in real estate, and I'm guessing this is can be said for a lot of different industries, but we have to understand that our clients are usually looking for multiple different resources all in one. A lot of our clients or to be honest with you, most of our team's clients are first-time home buyers. And a lot of these people come to us without knowing even what the first step is. They don't know if they need to contact us first or a mortgage lender first. Are there certain grants available for certain demographics? And so knowing that a part of the value that we bring to the community is being a one-stop shop, and also knowing that while we're trying to actively increase minority home ownership, we are going to be dealing with a lot of first-time homeowners. In order to get these people into the homes, we have to, as real estate agents, be in very, very close communication with lenders that also work with first-time home buyers, because a lot of these first-time homeowner grants are kind of first come, first serve. And so it's up to us as real estate agents to know which lenders are doing what as far as, different demographics, because that in turn, like I said, helps us bring more value to the public. The problem that we do see, though, is while this information is technically out there for the public, knowing that they should be looking for it is a whole different conversation. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do. On the other hand, as well as obviously sell real estate and trying to create that homeownership dream for as many people as possible, we also realize that this is not even going to be worth it if we can't share this education to people. And so that grassroots approach is what we've really started to adapt or adopt as far as the direction that we're moving, just because of that disparity that you're mentioning. The availability of these grants and resources, like I said, if it's not something that you're actively tracking and watching, then a lot of times it'll come and go before the people that need them and really need access to those resources have a chance to capitalize on them.
Travis, that's a great point when you talk about access to resources. And even thinking about the pandemic, right? Like, we already had caste systems. We already were experiencing huge amounts of disparity. And then you add COVID and the pandemic on top of that. And we just seen just numbers of people in need really, really grow. And so, Rudy, thinking about that, thinking about some of the things we talked about, like you mentioned earlier about that you guys closed down shop for safety and were from home for a little while and missed some opportunities. What are some things that you've experienced or saw that show that the caste system, hasn't been exasperated, which I know it has, and what are some things that maybe you saw where that was exhibited, and then even share maybe something that you did to counter that? Because I know who you are, so I know even if you saw need, you wouldn't go without addressing need. So maybe share something you saw I'll ask that from everyone, so.
Sure. I saw that for as well as we're doing, we need to better equip ourselves with good tools that could help us weather the rough storms that life brings. The flood recovery efforts of 2008, that we in our community had the double barrel of flood recovery plus the housing crisis. So when we look at home ownership is for all practical purposes a 30 to 40-year commitment. That's one of the major reasons why we're able to transfer generational wealth. But sometimes we run into a bottleneck when we move from one generation of home ownership to the next for various reasons. So what we saw during the pandemic, the initial start of it was people were being put in harm's way, not only because of the disease itself, but because of how society was responding to it. We don't have the types of savings accounts that we used to have. Some folks don't have access to capital through home equity loans. So if a person don't have those minimal tools when it's good, when there's no pandemic, one can only imagine what they're going through if the furnace goes out and they just lost their job. If they were needing a new roof and just lost their job and can't get a $15,000 line of credit, and once that roof starts leaking, then it's going to damage possibly the interior. So one thing we need to keep in mind is that all houses have the DNA of slum and blight in them, which means they're getting old from day one. We also see how the lack of building material and the prices start skyrocketing, which some folks couldn't get those kind of housing repairs need. So if nothing else, we just need to be kinder and help everybody get through these times of trauma.
Well, I appreciate
Yeah.
that comment. And I think that's a nice segue to the question I want to share now. I think Wilkerson in the book did mention something to the degree about evil making a demand. And I don't know if that's well worded. It's almost like justice is really making a demand on the dominant class. But obviously the dominant class or the dominant caste, they don't really respond very well when justice calls. And so what is the responsibility of the rest of us then when it comes to, trying to bend our ear to justice in order to ensure that those who are in fact excluded or left out, that action step that Joy was talking about before, the action, how do we get people involved so that we can try to mitigate the damage that caste does cause in the United States of America and in the local economy? What do we do? How do we change this stuff?
Reverend Funches, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump on this one first, because this is a kind of conversation I just recently had with one of my team members, and it was just in reference to kind of what you just said, how equality is something that even the oppressor can preach about striving for, but when it comes to giving up some of that leverage, then that's when that voice gets a little more quiet. And we reference real estate just because that's our industry. And, we look at a number of brokerages that are in diverse cities, and you don't see the diversity of the city on the wall of agents or on the wall of top investors. And so you have to ask why. And so when it comes to that caste system that's embedded in the DNA of the country, and some would argue is embedded in human nature. I don't know. But when you talk about that and you talk about real estate, what I hear a lot of, especially after, the recent events, that kind of skyrocketed a lot of racial tension, you see a lot of companies that are trying to get into the spotlight and teach all these new diversity trainings. And let's go on record and have our one Black employee come and talk about some experiences that they've had, so we can be on record and saying that our company had that, right? But when it comes to addressing the real issue, and if you have to ask yourself, for example, in real estate, why is there no diversity in the business? Well, you have to start with, the schools. What are these kids seeing? What are they, if they're not seeing it in their neighborhood, are they seeing it in their schools? And so what we've tried to do is to get in front of as many young people as possible and just try to let them see that, hey, real estate is something that is a possibility to you, because I feel like the only way to really get that diversity that we're really trying to get is to make this concept normal and a household bundle of knowledge that kids have access to. And so the way that I see it, and this again just kind of addressing the topic of letting go of some of that power to increase that equality, you don't see a whole lot of that, because when it comes to actually putting boots on the ground and getting into the trenches, that's when that ambition of wanting equality usually kind of dies down from a lot of people. And so I think the only way that I see that I found effective anyway, and I'm that's why I love these conversations, because I'm excited to see other people's point of view. But the only way that I found of doing that is to get at the grassroots and get representation first and foremost, because you can say anything you want to, but unless a young person sees themselves in a position of power, then there's no way that they're going to pursue it. So representation is always number one with our team, and just in the industry in general, the way that we look at it. And I think that we have to start really with that. And that's really kind of the most impactful way that I can think of to get any kind of equality, especially when it comes to something as powerful as home ownership.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we need to, everyone has to step up. Everyone has to, promote diversity, promote inclusion, be the first. We're all going to be better if we're working together. If we become more diverse, we as a company, we as a people, everyone is going to get better. And I think showing that is the first step. So if you're getting out there, a lot of people have been saying that, people aren't making that first step. The upper caste is not taking that initiative, is not, they don't have the buy-in. They don't believe that this is going to make everyone better when it truly is. And I think part of that's getting those resources, getting that information out to the people that need it. Everyone as a community, if we need to build those relationships, whether that's lending, whether that's a banking relationship, whether that's home ownership, we need to get that information accessible, whether it's being accessible at our location or it's us going out to the community, having events, holding, different forums, different informational sessions, whether it's education, whether it could be anything and everything. But it's going to start there. I think we got to build the relationships. We got to show that we're all better for the diversity and inclusion. And then it's going to be a trickle down effect. I think it'll snowball, but everyone's got to make that first step. And I hope we're doing that. We're seeing a lot of change, and not just our company, but other banks throughout the state. And it's unfortunate how far it's gotten. It's gotten to the point where certain events that have happened are forcing companies and people to make those changes when it should have happened a long time ago. But I'm hoping that, we all grow and get better from here, and it's going to start with us. So we need to take that first step.
Well, I was just thinking, and I appreciate my co-moderator giving me another opportunity to squeeze in here. But I was just thinking, I have no doubt, that a lot of great people, even, and our brothers and sisters represented on the panel tonight, are doing great things to change the trajectory of what's happening in the community for the better. But the idea of, getting buy-in from the dominant cast, ooh, that sounds like hopeful thinking to me. Because Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without a demand. I think it was true then, and I think it's still true today. And I guess the question is, how do you go about doing that? How do you go about making or putting that demand on, the dominant crust? I know that Joy Briscoe, for instance, 24/7 Leadership Advancement Consortium, financial literacy and education. I feel like you're making a demand when you do that. And I was just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit as it fits in with the rest of your direction tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Abraham, you are so right on point, because while I do believe education is very, very important, I always feel like we're remiss if we don't also talk about that there are systemic casts in place that created barriers to education, right? So financial literacy can help, but access to funding is really what we need. We need access to resources. We need access to opportunities. That's the great equalizer, right? Like, there's a bunch of studies that have come out and said, like, Black and brown people are getting educated, yet those disparity in wages is increasing and increasing. So we know that while we've been told education is the key, it helps, right? But there also has to be some dismantling of some of these caste systems. So like with 24/7 Black, we do the financial literacy piece, but we also talk to businesses about, like, okay, so what does your leadership look like, right? Like, if diversity really truly is key to you, then how can we help assist it and shift what your leadership looks like so that it can be more reflective of the community that you serve? And therefore, you're going to see increased numbers all across the board, and innovation, increased numbers and diversity coming in to work for you. We can help you with that. And so we take it from, we call it a navigational approach, but it just really means that we don't rest in that this responsibility is on one way where we got to educate the oppressed and then everything will magically be fixed. We understand that the caste system has to be dismantled as well. And so we have to work intentionally and focused on that and have honest and hard and critical conversations sometimes. And we do that, have a great board, but definitely relates to what we're talking about today. So I'm excited. We are getting ready to roll out a home ownership program where we're working with financial institutions. We have Community Bank and Trust. Stacey's already said she wants to be a part of it. Wells Fargo, US Bank, because again, much like what Travis said, it's not one person or it's not one entity. It has to be a collaborative effort. It didn't, in the book, she talks about oftentimes when we say racism, people are able to say, well, this guy's more racist than me, so I'm good, right? But we got to start thinking about it from systemic caste. And then we have to think about how we dismantle those. So like 24/7 is being really intentional in that. We started the Black Business and Entrepreneurship Accelerator. We're excited that soon we'll actually be providing some financial supports. We're working with some partners to be able to do that. So we're just, the things that have already been identified in that 24/7 Wall Street report that are why we are in the position that we're in. We just hyper laser focus in on those. Take it step by step. We know you got to eat an elephant one step at a time, right? One bite at a time. So we definitely do that, but we make sure we eat. That's the important, right? We make sure we're starting that meal to get things going. And we have conversations, but our conversations have to result in some type of action. That's one of our mantras and models. So thank you for asking that, Abraham. Appreciate that.
And Joy, real quick, I want to say that really resonated with me when you put a spotlight on the lack of diversity in the leadership of a company. A lot of times, that is a statement, because the way that I look at it is, if you have any kind of business that's in a diverse community and you don't have diversity on your leadership, one out of two things happen. Either you designed it like that, or else maybe the system or the industry you're in is designed like that. And I think when you just said that we should ask, companies to explain the lack of diversity. And really that's not the burden of the, of us. It's the burden of the company to explain that. And then also, most importantly, and this is kind of what you were getting at, explain what they're trying to do about it. What do they have in place that's measurable, that they're trying to do about it? Because a lot of times just shedding that spotlight on that is enough to at least spark the flame.
Right. And I will say, in this current moment in our community, we've had a lot of partners reach out and say, how can we work together to get more leadership in the door? We're very, very frank that we don't really talk about entry level, not because they're not valuable, but just because we need to get people to livable, sustainable wages. It's very difficult to talk about home ownership. It's very difficult to really have a focus on growing your wealth when you're trying to survive, right? And so try to focus on positions to get people that will get people out of survival mode so that they can focus on those transformational things in their sphere of influence. And so I'll definitely say I feel fortunate in our community that right now there are a lot of partners. We've talked to Stacy, Community Bank and Trust, about, how can we get some more Black and brown people in the lending? We've talked to, so we're at a good spot. And so I'm just hoping, and I was on a panel earlier when I said, when it's not sexy to promote Black and brown people, I hope we still promote Black and brown people, because it's necessary for our community. It's necessary for innovation, and it's truly necessary for us to thrive, for everyone to thrive. And so that's, Travis, I so agree with you that we have to talk to companies about it, and not only talk to them about it, but again, we've gotten some people placed that some companies, and again, not in entry-level positions, they're in middle-level positions and looking at leadership. And that's only been by having those conversations and opening up those doors. So,
one of the things that I was reflecting on while both of you were talking, just brilliant conversation, but Wilkerson talks about, and I'm wondering how much of this still goes on today, about the father who named the daughter Miss, so that everybody would have to refer to this young lady as Miss. And of course, we've heard of other children named Major, Mr., Sir, because when you call them by their name, you're going to have to show them some respect. But obviously, that kind of thinking is born out of a caste system. The father quietly engaged in this revolutionary act to name his daughter something that everybody is going to have to respect, whether they want to or not, if you're going to call this person by their name. What's going on like that today? What are people doing? Because there was also other discussion about, I think it was Douglas. Douglas said something about, the tone of how you communicate to some of these people in power, whether you answer their question, or if you do answer their question. I mean, you just left discombobulated. You don't even know how you want to proceed, because you don't know how the person in power is going to accept you. They might like your hair today, but they might not like your hair today, because they think you're supposed to conform with certain images that they have embedded in their thinking. And if you don't conform with that, you're out of your caste. And it's creating a tension. How do we reconcile our social political realities with the expectations of those who are in powerful positions? And how do we explain caste to our babies who are trying to figure this stuff out?
Is that for anybody?
Yes, sir.
So in my world, the term that we most often use is affordable. And I find myself often having to correct folks with low housing. Low income housing, no, this is what these individuals can afford. So we first of all have to change, again, the code that we talk in, and have folks understand that it's affordable. It's not just low income because the people can't afford more. we try to meet people where they are, what they can afford versus, wherever their income level is. So we're trying to, now we have to, gauge and do some of that data collection in certain categories that places persons here. But when we get down to the human level, we use the term, what's affordable? And we often will correct folks before we get down into the trenches about the program to make sure that we understand that we're going to approach these individuals with a sense of dignity and with a sense of humanity, irregardless of their income level.
And unbelievably, we have 5 minutes left, Joy.
That's why I wanted to get that in.
All right, we'll take it, definitely. Jason, would you have anything to build on what Abraham's question about, when it comes to, even in your role, like when it comes to addressing individuals, or how do we deal with the tension that can be when you have to navigate caste systems?
Yeah, I love the example where the father named the daughter Miss, and how it created such an uproar at school, and they, the principal couldn't believe this. But I try to look at that example, and what did the father do? Well, he kind of reverse engineered what was wanting to be accomplished, what was the need, and what are the solutions to satisfy that need? How can we get to the point where she is being called Miss? And that's kind of, from my point of view, from the lending side, what are those barriers? Is it like Rudy had said, affordable, or is that the key issue, or is it a collateral issue? Is it the debt service coverage on something like that? The income that's coming in going to be able to make these payments. Okay, well, let's identify what the problem is and find a way to get around that. And maybe that's partnering with one of the other organizations that we work with, or maybe we need to start from a different area. Maybe it's not specifically getting a commercial loan for working capital. Maybe it's, okay, you need this equipment to get you to the point where you're creating more of working capital, you're creating more income. So we're trying to look at things from an objective point of view, high level of, okay, let's identify what are the different ways we can get you to your goal. How can we accomplish this? Maybe it's not that direct path. Maybe we got to go a different route. And I think we need to just be able to look at things from a different point of view, different angle, so that we're all accomplishing that goal.
Travis, what are your thoughts on that? We're coming up on last words here, and I love always listening to Abraham speak, so I want to leave some time for him to close us out as well. But Travis, what are your thoughts on what was said?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. When you talk about speaking that empowerment into somebody, I've seen firsthand the look on people's faces once they get the keys to their first property or their first investment property or their piece of land. And I think just by the same example that Rudy gave, it's not low income, it's affordable. When you see somebody be able to say that I'm an owner, there's something about that concept that once somebody obtains it, you have to address them differently. And I don't care if it's a $30,000 small fixer upper or $1 million house. There's that cloak of armor of ownership that I see people get, and they walk differently. Their chest is puffed out a little bit more, and their chin is a little bit held higher. So I think that power is something that we feel like we have the ability to give people, and that gets us out of bed in the morning. So I think just that idea of addressing somebody as something the same as changing their name, to embed that respect. We see a lot of that in the power of home ownership as well.
Yeah, well, I just loved the comparison between the name change and the acquisition of a house. Both are powerful, and as each and every one of you, all are powerful. And I just want to punctuate the fact that my sister Joy is working with an awesome team of collaborators all across the community in order to try to change the narrative that has characterized the community in many ways. And we so applaud your leadership and the work that you're doing, obviously. We're just grateful for everybody on this panel. Jones, you got about 10 more years, right, in local government?
Maybe.
Okay, we don't need you to go anywhere anytime soon. Huh?
I love this work, man. I love this work. I'm just trying to leave it better than when I found it.
I know that's right. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to get on off tonight. We've been speaking to you now for about an hour, and you've heard some beautiful conversation from all of these panelists. But the book Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, it may change your view about the way that you look at race, racism, casteism here in the United States of America. Maybe it'll change your view of the way you understand US history. And we're hoping that that might be the case, because obviously the books are chosen to be provocative on purpose. And so we hope that you go back and have some meaningful discussions as we all continue to try to grow and spread our wings a little bit and broaden our horizons. We appreciate all of you. Have a good time reading your books.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.